I think it's fair to say that since COVID-19, although this is something I've always done, I've always tried to buy Australian-made and Australian-owned products.
Yeah.
But especially since the virus, a lot of people are looking inward and saying, come on, we've got to start supporting our own. And that's the reason why we have Australian owned. It's a company that looks after those Australian-made products.
I must say that's why I hate shopping with the wife, because shopping goes forever because she reads every label.
Good on her.
If only there was a way that it was easily identified.
If only.
Why is it so important? Let's talk to Eddie Kokwa. Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning, guys.
Eddie, what is the basis behind the company Australian Owned?
The idea came out a couple of months ago when the coronavirus pandemic was really taking off. I started to get a bit worried about the Australian economy. Basically, Australia is just a big business and we need to make sure it's profitable. And I thought we need a way of identifying products that are actually Australian owned. So when people go and shop, they can make their own little difference in keeping our economy going.
But I think I need you to explain, because we do get confused with Australian owned and Australian made. Can you give us an example?
Yep. Australian made was set up a number of years ago. It basically labels a product that is just Australian made. There are a lot of products out there now that are made in Australia, but they're actually owned by overseas companies. So a good example is R.M. Williams. Those boots, iconic Australian boots, but it's owned by a Singaporean company. So all the profits are going overseas. So we want to identify products that are Australian owned and Australian made.
So to qualify for this, would the company have to be, 51% owned by an Australian, but could still be 49% owned by someone else?
No. We've set the bar at 80%. That's majority Australian owned. And the biggest important thing, it's got Australian control. 80% guarantees Australian control.
And we've got to be careful too when we're buying products that just because it's got a koala or a kangaroo or something like that on the label doesn't necessarily mean the profits are going here.
Correct. It's very sneaky. I mean, all companies can put whatever they like on the label and no one, adjudicates or checks it. So that's why we've created this certification mark. So we've lodged these rules with the ACCC, and basically any company that displays our logo, you can be assured that they've gone through our verification process and they are actually Australian owned.
How do you find people taking to this? Because a while ago, a few decades ago, there was the Australian cultural cringe where we wouldn't buy anything Australian. Everything overseas looked better, but I think that's gone now.
People weren't as patriotic some years ago, but now, especially given what's happened in the last couple of months, people are finding that patriotic bone and they're supporting Australians.
Yeah, except for those German cars, because they make great cars.
Yeah, there must be a few exceptions. Yeah.
Eddie, what about those of us who have, been quite a few generations from the one family in Australia? I mean, I tend to buy the peanut butter that my mum used to buy, thinking that it's still Australian. What happens in that situation?
It's a shame, to be honest. For example, Kraft is an overseas-owned company, but Bega isn't. We just need to educate people because a lot of these brands that have been Australian for a long, long time have been sold off. Give companies an incentive for staying Australian owned. If the Australian public decides that they will only support Australian owned companies, then big companies will think twice before they get sold off because they'll lose profit.
Eddie, I love this idea. I think it's great. But then do you have also an Australian-owned supermarket? Because a lot of the supermarket chains, the money just goes back out of the country.
We're planning to make an Australian-owned platform. So when you go to shop on that platform, you know that everything is Australian-owned. First thing we want to do is make sure that all products are correctly identified so people can make an informed decision when they shop.
Just out of interest, Eddie, who owns your company?
Fully Australian owned, mate.
Oh,
He passed.
the pause had me worried for a bit.